So we'd like to welcome Swami Atmarupananda. Thank you so much, Swami, for coming. And please, the platform is yours.
Thank you, Swami, and namaste to everyone. I hope everyone can hear me. We tested the system earlier and finally got it to work. The problem was on my side. It looks like people can hear. I'm glad to see as many faces as will come up on my screen without scrolling through all of the 450 something faces. So this evening we have Raja Yoga, as Swami Harinamananda said. My thanks to him for the wonderful work he has done in organizing this course. He's put a lot of work into this, and to Vikram Bhaskar, who has been his technical assistant. They've put in a lot of work, and people like me just have to come and talk a little bit. They have to do the work. So today I will speak about Raja Yoga. It's a big subject, and we have little time. And so fasten your seatbelts. We'll take off with Raja Yoga now. So first, the name Raja Yoga. Raja, of course, as everyone knows, even those who have never studied any Sanskrit, it means king, or here it means royal. And so the royal yoga. So I want to spend just a minute or two talking about the name and why the name. First of all, the yoga of Patanjali, the great sage who wrote the Yoga Sutras, that was not always known as Raja Yoga. It's known as Patanjala Yoga or Yoga Darshanam. Patanjala Yoga meaning the yoga written by Patanjali, and Yoga Darshanam meaning the philosophy that is called yoga. And so yoga, of course, is something that's used in a very wide context, but often when you speak just about yoga as a discipline or as a philosophy, you're speaking about the yoga of Patanjali, which he taught in his Yoga Sutras. Oh, I meant to bring my little book of just of the Yoga Sutras, just so I could show you, those of you who have not studied it, just how short it is. It's 4 chapters with an average of about 40-something verses, or not verses, but short sentences, about 40-something short statements in each of 4 chapters. So it's very short, very concise, but it contains a whole world of thought and a world of practice. Now the term Raja Yoga, that was the term given to the path of meditation in the Tantric tradition. The Tantrikas, they called the path of meditation Raja Yoga. And I don't know if others had done it before him, but at least in Swami Vivekananda's time, he used the term Raja Yoga from the Tantric tradition for Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, or rather the tradition that comes out of the Yoga Sutras. And so Raja Yoga now is widely used to mean Patanjali's system of yoga. So there's Patanjala Yoga, there's Raja Yoga of the Tantras, then there's Raja Yoga as taught by Swami Vivekananda. And you find in Swami Vivekananda's treatment of Raja Yoga, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, that he combines many of the ideas of Vedanta with yoga. He does that in a very subtle way because he points out the differences between the yoga system and the Vedanta system. But when he's actually teaching, he combines the 2 streams. And that's a process that will continue for centuries from now, the joining together of yoga and Vedanta. And there are teachers like Swami Shivananda of Rishikesh, who called his teachings Yoga Vedanta, which is a very nice, felicitous term. So why Raja Yoga? Why the royal path? Why did Swamiji choose that from the Tantric tradition for the whole system of this particular yoga? Because as he explains in his description of the seal of the order, the serpent, that which is behind Swami Harinamananda's head, those of you who can see him, who have video, the seal of the order with the serpent and the wavy water and the sun and the lotus, the serpent represents yoga, Raja Yoga. And the other 3 yogas are Karma Yoga, the wavy water, Jnana Yoga, the sun, and Bhakti Yoga, the lotus. Now in English, when I was working on the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, I found that something had been well, many things had been poorly translated, but one thing in particular pertaining to what we're talking about right now, they explained they had Swamiji explain the seal of the order as when these four yogas are combined, one attains the vision of the self. What Swamiji actually said was, when you combine bhakti, jnana, and karma, together with the power of Raja Yoga, which runs through all of them, then the vision of the self is attained. So he presented Raja Yoga as sort of that which empowers all of the yogas. And so I want to say a word about the place of Raja Yoga among the four yogas. That will be familiar to those of you who attended my Karma Yoga talk early in this Vedanta 101 series.
Swami, can you hold for one moment?
Yes.
There seems to be a lot of technical people asking about the sound, chatting. I need to see. By nodding, are you hearing Swami? I need just to see yes. So make sure, just give me a thumbs up. I'm going through everybody. Okay, all right, very good. Swami, go ahead. We had some technical, there's sound problems, but I think it's okay now. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So when I spoke on Karma Yoga a couple of weeks ago, as I said then, there are the four yogas which divide into two pairs. One pair, jnana and bhakti, the path of knowledge and the path of devotion. They pertain to our way of relating to reality, whether we look on reality as personal or as impersonal. Personal, the God of love in Bhakti Yoga. Impersonal, the absolute Brahman in Jnana Yoga. Karma Yoga and Raja Yoga pertain to our practice, the way that we practice. They don't care how you conceive of reality. You can perform or you can practice either karma or Raja Yoga, believing in God and worshiping God, or following the impersonal path. And that's stated even in the Yoga Sutras, where a place is given to the practice of devotion. So I won't belabor that point now because I dealt with it in the class on Karma Yoga. But just to mention again, that Raja Yoga, it's a practice. It's as close as you can get to a recipe for spiritual practice. Many of us, when we come to spiritual life, if we haven't had a childhood background in spiritual life, especially in the yoga and the Vedanta tradition, many of us are hoping to get a recipe for spiritual life. Do this, eat this, walk in this way, talk in this way, sit in this way, say these things, think these things, and then you will get spiritual enlightenment. Well, Raja Yoga comes as close as possible to presenting a recipe of spiritual life by teaching that which, if you follow the practices, you will in time get the result. It guarantees a result with time. But the time depends on two things: our past karma, how many obstacles we have to work through to get there, and how much energy we put into the path. But those are the only two things that determine how long it will take. But the guarantee is there that if we follow the practice, we will attain to the end in time. So as Swami Harinamananda mentioned in the introduction, according to each of the yogas, they have a different view of what is the cause of bondage, what is the cause of liberation, what is the practice, etc. So let me say a few words about that, and then we'll get into the basic concepts of Raja Yoga. In Raja Yoga, like in Jnana Yoga, the cause of bondage is ignorance. It's ignorance. And the means of liberation is correct knowledge. And so as far as that goes, it's just like Jnana Yoga. Where it differentiates itself from Jnana Yoga is that it says the proximate means, that is the final means of liberation is knowing the truth, that I am pure consciousness, I am the infinite, I am the Purusha, what in Vedanta we call the Atman. But to get there, in Jnana Yoga, the path is just to assert that truth over and over again, and just to hold on to that truth that I am the infinite, I am consciousness, and to try to hold on to consciousness. The path in Raja Yoga, however, is to perfect the mind as an instrument of experience. So why? Why do they try to perfect the mind? It's because there are four fields of experience that every person has, and any philosophy, if it's going to be a true comprehensive philosophy, has to deal with these four fields of experience. All of our experience falls into these four fields. One is the outer world. Another is the idea of self. So the outer world, Karma Yoga specializes in that. The idea of self, Jnana Yoga specializes in that. The field of value and truth, that's Bhakti Yoga specializes in that. But then there's the mind, which is the instrument of experience through which we experience everything. I experience the outer world, I experience self, I experience value, beauty, love, bliss. All things I experience through the mind. So the mind is the one and only instrument of experience. And so Raja Yoga focuses on the mind. If I want to have true experience, if I want to know the truth, if I want to see clearly and not live in a world of my own illusions, or illusions given by society, which I take on and become my own illusions, then I have to perfect the mind. Because if the mind is the only instrument of experience, and the mind is not in a good condition, how can I expect to experience the truth? I experience happiness through the mind, I experience sadness through the mind, fear in the mind, attachment in the mind, non-attachment in the mind. I experience my sense of self, I experience well-being, I experience knowledge, I experience ignorance. I experience everything in the mind. There's no other instrument of experience. And so if I can perfect the mind as an instrument of experience, then the limpid mind, the clear, clean, pure mind, it will give me a perfect understanding of reality. And that is what leads to the knowledge which gives us liberation. So in yoga, the final thing is knowledge, but you get to that knowledge through the development of the powers of the mind. Whereas in Jnana Yoga, pure Jnana Yoga, without the help of Raja Yoga, in pure Jnana Yoga, you don't care about the mind. I'm not the mind. Let the mind do whatever it wants to, but I'm the self. But Raja Yoga says, unless you have clarity of mind, your experience of everything is going to be clouded. So that's why Swamiji says, again, that Raja Yoga in the symbol, that ties all of the yogas together, because that is what perfects the instrument of experience which is needed in all of the yogas. So now Raja Yoga, hence, is the yoga of the mind, and therefore it's the yoga of psychology. Not clinical psychology, though some people have developed clinical therapies through the teachings of Raja Yoga, and that's a very good thing. Much more of that, I'm sure, will be done in coming centuries, this century and coming centuries. Much further development of Raja Yoga as a therapy also. But Raja Yoga in itself is not a clinical discipline. It's for perfecting the mind, taking the mind as it is now and perfecting it so that I can know the truth, making it a spiritual instrument. One more thing about Raja Yoga in general, and then we'll get into the concepts that are essential to understand yoga. And that is the value of concentration. The great discipline in yoga is concentrating the mind. The yamas, niyamas, the breath control, asanas, the postures and all of that, those are all done in order to affect the mind. And to affect the mind so that the mind is able to concentrate. So why do we want to concentrate the mind? We want to concentrate the mind because that is the way we get all knowledge. All knowledge comes through concentration. As Swami Vivekananda says, the astronomer focuses the power of her mind and throws it through the telescope into the heavens, and the heavens gives up its secrets to the astronomer. The biologist concentrates the powers of his mind and focuses it through the microscope, and the microscopic world reveals its secrets. The linguist focuses her mind on the study of language, and language gives up its secrets. And so with every field of endeavor, if we can learn to focus the mind, if we can learn to bring the rays of the mind together, then the mind has tremendous power, and through that power, we can do much more than we can with our mind at present. At present, our mind is going in all sorts of directions. It's distractions from existing of the mind. We're not producing anything new. We're taking the existing power and rays of the mind and focusing them. So the modern analogy is given, modern that is as of several centuries, of a magnifying glass. All of us when we were kids, we used to take a magnifying glass outside and catch the sun and focus it on dry leaves or a piece of paper and set it on fire. What are you doing? Magnifying glass is not producing anything new. It takes the rays of the sun that are already there, but the rays are dispersed in all directions. Takes those rays and concentrates them in a focal point, and then those existing rays, because they're focused, they have the power to set things on fire. And so the same with the mind. When the existing energy and rays of the mind are brought together and focused on one point, the mind gains tremendous power. Here's a problem. The problem is that that's very hard to do. It takes a lifetime of practice. It's a lifetime of practice, but it's worth doing. It's worth dedicating your life to trying to do this day after day in whatever way you can, little by little, step by step. And along the way, you'll find that the mind gets better and better. It often doesn't seem that way. Many people say that I've been meditating for several years and I don't feel any change. Well, no, you have changed. It's just that the change is so slow that you don't see it. But the change is there. And over a long period of time, you'll look back and see, no, my mind has changed greatly. And sometimes those changes come, not step by step by step by step, but a long time, it doesn't seem anything's happening, then suddenly there's a change. And then step by step that you don't even notice, and then suddenly there's a big change. So don't worry if you don't feel you're getting anywhere. If you're practicing, if you're trying, you are getting somewhere. It doesn't matter if you feel that you're not, or if you feel that, well, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Just the attempt itself is of great benefit to you. So, the Yoga Sutras. The Yoga Sutras, again, that's the basic text of Patanjali's yoga system. And it said that the first 4 sutras, again, there are 4 chapters. Each chapter has 40-something verses on average. And the first 4 sutras of the first chapter contain everything that you need to know of yoga. That is everything that the person of the highest qualification needs. Like Sri Ramakrishna, when he went to Totapuri to learn the Advaita system of Vedanta, he didn't have to do what we have to do and study so many things and try to understand so many things. Totapuri just gave him simple instruction, told him to meditate on the pain between his eyebrows when he put a piece of glass, stuck a piece of glass there to concentrate his mind. And Ramakrishna went into Samadhi and transcended the realm of time and space, and even the realm of the Divine Mother, and plunged into Brahman, into the Atman. We don't do that because we're not, we don't have the preparation he had. And so in the Yoga Sutras, if one had that kind of preparation, the first 4 sutras are enough. That's all you have to study. So I'll give you the first 4 sutras. And if people start disappearing, I'll know that either they're bored or they attained Samadhi already. So the first sutra is Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Now for the study of yoga. So that's a pretty simple sutra, and I don't see any people disappearing yet. So I imagine that wasn't enough to give it to you. So it's seemingly too simple, but what it means is, now that you have come to the point in your life where you've understood the value of learning spiritual discipline, now I, Patanjali, will teach you the yoga discipline. So now for the study of yoga means now that you have come to the point where you recognize the value and you're ready to undergo the discipline. Second sutra is the very definition of Patanjali's definition of yoga. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the cessation of the modifications of the mind. So here we have to understand, and we'll come back to this, the mind is seen like a lake where each thought, each experience, each emotion Each perception, each memory in the mind is like a wave. And so if we can bring the mind to a perfect point of stillness, then that is nirodha. That is the cessation of the waves or the modifications of the mind. And what does that do? If we attain to that, that's the very highest development of yoga. If we attain to that, then we see the distinction between consciousness and the mind. The mind appears conscious because of the light of consciousness, which is our true nature. We are not the mind, we're not the body, we are consciousness itself, which shines through the mind and body, and we've identified with the mind and body. But when the mind is perfectly still, we can clearly see the distinction between consciousness and the mind. And of course the body, because the body itself comes from the mind, according to Vedanta, yoga, all Indian thought. So, yoga is the cessation of the waves of the mind. The third sutra says, Tada drashtu swarupe vastanam. Then the seer, that who I am, that which I am, the self, the purusha, the atman, tada drashtu swarupe vastanam. Then the seer is established in its own nature. It, because it's neither male nor female. We are neither male nor female. This body may be male or female, but we are not. We are consciousness shining through a particular body. And so when the modifications of the mind cease, then the seer, that which we really are, is established in its own nature. Then I know who I am. Oh gosh, now suddenly I've forgotten the fourth one. Vritti sarupyam itaratra. Vritti sarupyam itaratra. At other times, there is identification with the modifications of the mind. So I think I'm depressed. No, I'm never depressed. And that means speaking for everyone. I'm never depressed. None of us is ever depressed. It's the mind which has a wave of depression. And I identify with the wave of depression. Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so elated right now. No, I'm never elated. I'm the steady light of pure consciousness. The mind is in a state of elation. I'm angry. No, I, meaning each one of us, I am never angry. The mind is in a state of anger, and I identify with that wave of anger in the mind. I'm so attached to so-and-so. No, I'm never attached. I'm the light which illuminates all of experience. But that modification in the mind, I'm attached. I think that I am that modification of attachment. I think that I am that. So that's the whole of yoga. Now for the study of yoga, because I've understood the need for it. Second, yoga is the cessation of the vrittis, of the modifications of the mind. When that happens, I, the Purusha, am established in my own nature. I know who I am. At other times, when the mind is in motion, then I tend to identify with the waves in the mind. So it said that those who don't get liberation after understanding that, then the first 16 sutras are meant for them. If after that they don't get it, the first chapter is meant for them. And then for the rest of us who don't get it after studying the first chapter, all 4 chapters are needed and a lifetime of practice. So unfortunately, that's where most of us fall. We fall into needing a lifetime of practice. So now let me go briefly, because half of the time is already up, over basic concepts we need to understand. I'm going to try to speak in terms that have some practical value, because just talking empty concepts and philosophy is not what we're here for. We want to understand the concepts, but we want to understand them for the sake of practice. So I'll try as far as possible in the very limited time for a subject like this, as big as this, to give the concepts, but with some practical significance. So the first concept I want to give is the goal of yoga, because the goal of yoga, as yoga describes it, is a somewhat forbidding term. That is kaivalya, kaivalya. Kaivalya comes from the Sanskrit word kevala. Kevala means only, or alone, or as an adverb, only. And Kaivalya means the state of aloneness, the state of aloneness. That sounds pretty dreadful. People are suffering so much, as Swami Harinamananda referred in the introduction, people suffering from the present lockdown because they want to hug, they want to be with people, they want to commune with people, they want community, and all of those are good things. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's natural, we're social animals, it's natural that we want to be with people, we want to interact with people. That's how we develop our sense of self, our ordinary sense of self and personality, our sense of the world and everything else. But a time comes when Kaivalya is something which is a tremendous desire of the heart. Now we get an inkling of that even in little children, from the time children are small. All of us, I feel sure, at least people that I've talked to, everybody, it seems to be a common experience, remember times when they were children, or if you have children, you've seen the children telling their brothers and sisters, leave me alone, don't bother me, leave me alone. I just want to be left alone. So that's a common feeling, that I want everybody to leave me alone. Of course, if everybody actually leaves us alone, we start feeling lonely. So, but a time comes when we realize that aloneness is not loneliness. Loneliness is being one with the infinite. Nothing is outside of that. So let me read two quotations from Swami Vivekananda, where he gives ecstatic expression to this urge for Kaivalya. So again, if Kaivalya doesn't attract you now, know that a time will come when it will. So Swamiji says in one of his lectures called The Goal, which he gave in California, can you realize there will come a time when everything will crumble in the dust and you will stand alone? That moment of ecstatic joy will never leave you. That is, it's eternal. You will actually find that you are without bodies. You never had bodies. I am one, alone through all eternity. Whom shall I fear? It is all myself. This is continuously to be meditated upon. Through that comes realization. It is through realization that you become a blessing to others. So here you see, again, it's important to understand when you come across this term Kaivalya, that it's not talking about loneliness as we understand it. Here you are the one reality in the universe. There's nothing outside of you. Loneliness comes because I feel small, I feel insignificant, and there's all this big world out there and nobody cares for me. Everybody's forgotten about me. Nobody knows that I'm here, suffering in my little apartment, and others are carrying on their lives, and I'm just left here all by myself. No, it's not that at all. It's the opposite of that. It's knowing that you are the whole of reality. There's nothing outside of you. And in another lecture called The Soul and God, also given in California, Swamiji says, blessed am I that I know this moment, that I have been and shall be free all eternity, that I know that I am worshiping only myself, that no nature, no delusion had any hold on me. Vanish nature from me, vanish these gods, vanish worship, vanish superstitions, for I know myself. I am the infinite. All these, Mrs. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, responsibility, happiness, misery, have vanished. I am the infinite. Meditate upon it with all the strength of the mind till you actually see these walls, houses, everything melt away, until body, everything vanishes. I will stand alone. I am the one. So again, that's an extraordinary statement of the state of Kaivalya. Of course, he's speaking of it from the state of Advaita, and there's a subtle difference there. I won't go into that. It's not time for going into the differences between the yogic Kaivalya and the Advaitic state of realization. But it serves very well to express what Kaivalya means. It's not aloneness in any sense that we are familiar with. It's aloneness in the sense that I have always been alone and always will be alone because I am the one reality. Everything is within me. There's nothing outside. So that's one thing to understand, is the idea of Kaivalya, the goal which we are striving for. Another thing is the things that impede our progress. And those are called the kleshas. In English spelling, it would be, or Roman spelling, it would be Klesha, klesha, one klesha, and multiple kleshas, a Sanskrit term which means a pain-bearing obstruction. Pain-bearing because these are the source of our suffering. Even the happiness, what we call happiness now, eventually we find that compared to what we want, the infinite bliss that we're seeking, even our present happiness is a type of misery. It just seems happy because it's not as miserable as the other state we're used to. So the kleshas are 5, pain-bearing obstructions are 5. One is avidya, which means ignorance. And that's the source of all of the others. The ignorance which makes me think I am who I am not. Patanjali defines it. It's defined in a more complex and comprehensive sense, but there's not time to go into all of that. But ignorance here means that I think that I am this body, this mind, I'm subject to birth and death. Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm miserable. I have all of these fears and other things. It's that ignorance which makes me think myself, I who am the eternal light of consciousness, the light of joy itself, to think that that's not what I am. So out of ignorance comes asmita, I-ness, that which separates me from everything else, the sense of I am-ness. Now here there's an important distinction I should at least mention with Vedanta, because in Vedanta, not Vedanta, but the Jnana Yoga path within Vedanta, because in Jnana Yoga, we take the I am as the intuition of the self, the true self, the Atman. And so we hold on to the I am, and through that we try to go to the infinite. But the fact is, and that's good, that's a very great practice. I do that myself as one of my practices. But the fact is that a time comes where the sense of I am itself disappears. And that which is indicated by I am, which is the true self, that remains, but it's a silent self. There's no sense of I am there. So I am is part of our manifest being. And so yoga concentrates on it as part of the manifest being. Vedanta concentrates on it as rooted in the true self. So in yoga, the first is ignorance. Out of ignorance comes the sense that I am a phenomenal being. That sense of I amness is tied to my being a phenomenal individual separate from all of you. And then out of that, out of ignorance leading to egoism, the sense of I am, that leads to the other 3. Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha. Raga means attachment. Dvesha means hatred, anger, all of those emotions. And Abhinivesha means fear. And so these are the 3 primary emotions in yoga and in Vedanta. The Buddhists have the kleshas also, but they have 3, but they describe them somewhat differently. But in Vedanta and in yoga, the 3 main kleshas that we have to deal with right now in the beginning of our spiritual life are attachment, hatred, and fear. All of our other emotions, lower emotions like jealousy and envy and things, pride and all of those things, those are combinations of these, mixtures of these 3. Just as you take the 3 primary colors, yellow, blue, and red, and all of the other colors you can make out of those. And so these are the 3 primary negative emotions. What we also call emotions like love, compassion, etc., those are something completely different. They shouldn't be called emotions at all because they're not in the same category as hatred, anger, jealousy, all of these things. In our minds, the 2 are mixed together, but that's part of our problem. That's part of our ignorance. And so the kleshas are these, are attachment, that is moving towards, I want it. Hatred, pushing against, I don't want it. And fear, turning and running the other way. So pulling towards because I want it, pushing against because I hate it, and then running away from because I'm afraid of it. Those are the 3 basic emotions, and those are the sources of our misery. And they're built on egoism, the sense that I'm separate from everybody else. I am a phenomenal being, and that comes out of primordial ignorance. So the kleshas are very important to understand. And these kleshas are mentioned throughout the Yoga Sutras. And Patanjali says in the 2nd chapter, the 11th sutra, that dhyana heyaha tadvritayaha. the modifications of the mind, which are joined with these kleshas, which are affected by these kleshas, by these pain-bearing obstructions, attachment, hatred, fear, egoism, etc., that those are negated by meditation. Dhyana heyaha. They are negated by meditation. And so the practice of meditation in Raja Yoga is to overcome these kleshas. So now let me say a word about the chitta, the mind in yoga. The analysis of the mind is slightly different from the Vedantic analysis. Both are harmonizable. It's just that yoga calls certain things different things. In yoga, the chitta is the mind itself. The basic, as Swami Vivekananda says in his Raja Yoga, he keeps talking about the mind stuff. It took me many years of study and looking and thinking before I understood. Because in Vedanta, the chitta is one of four aspects of mind. And the chitta is sort of the unconscious mind, the repository of memories and so forth. But in yoga, the mind is the whole of the mind is the chitta. And it's the chitta that takes on the different functions such as buddhi and ahamkara and manas, etc. But the chitta is the actual stuff of the mind which modulates in different ways and different functions. And so it's that chitta which has vrittis, V-R-I-T-T-I, one vritti. Vritti means a modification of the mind. And so again, if you take the mind as a lake, then a vritti, a modification, is like a wave. So every perception we have, every time we perceive something, every time we think something, every time we remember something, every time we feel something, whatever registers in the mind, it raises a vritti, a modification. And so it's very important in understanding yoga to understand the chitta, the mind stuff, and the vrittis, that which affect it. And then it's important to understand that these vrittis, these modifications of the mind, that they, in the normal state, they're scattered. Our normal state of consciousness is vikshipta, this distracted state of mind. Or sometimes it's kshipta, that is restless. When the mind is really restless, it's called kshipta. Vikshipta, and again, you don't need to worry about the Sanskrit, the vikshipta, but for those who know Sanskrit, it's helpful. Vikshipta means our ordinary state of distractedness, when the mind is thinking of different things and we're distracted. And then mudha. Mudha is when the mind is sort of stupefied, where the mind is just like mud. It's hardly functioning. We're awake, we're barely conscious, but we're kind of in a stupor. So that's mudha. Then ekagra, that's what we want. By making the mind ekagra literally means one-pointed, eka agra. So ekagra is the one-pointed state of mind. So by taking the mind which is restless or a little more disciplined, just distracted, by taking that mind and making it one-pointed, that's what yoga is about. Because through making the mind one-pointed, we can get to the point where there's a single modification of the mind which just stays there. Actually, it doesn't actually stay there. Just the same wave keeps rising over and over with no other wave in the mind, no other modification of the mind. When we've attained to that, then we practice nirodha, that is the cessation of even that wave. That's a very high practice which we come to only near the end of spiritual life, where we suppress even that wave, and then the mind attains to chitta vritti nirodha, the cessation of all of the activities of the mind, and then we attain to liberation. So all of these are important to understand. Now, Patanjali teaches two paths, and in each path there are a variety of disciplines. One path is the path of Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga. He says in the beginning of the second chapter, the sadhana pada, the chapter on practice, he says, tapaswadhyayeshwara pranidhanani kriya yoga. Kriya yoga means tapas, which means austerity, but not as we think of austerity in the West. I'll explain it in a moment. It means austerity, it means self-study, and it means surrender to God. Surrender to God. So these three are the practices of Kriya Yoga. And many of you, and maybe some of you, practice the Kriya Yoga of the Self-Realization Fellowship as taught by Paramahamsa Yogananda and by Lahiri Mahashaya and others in that tradition. That's a very good practice. And they call it Kriya Yoga, which is quite legitimate, but it's not what Patanjali is talking about. These are terms that are general terms that can be applied in different situations. So in Patanjali, when he speaks of Kriya, it's not contrary to Kriya Yoga in Patanjali, but it's not the same thing. In the Kriya Yoga of Patanjali, it means practice of austerity. What does austerity mean? It doesn't mean torturing the body. It doesn't mean mortification of the flesh and things like that. It means disciplining the body and its appetites for the sake of concentrating the mind. Just disciplining the body and mind just because I don't like the body and mind, that's repression. That's unhealthy, that's bad. But disciplining the mind and body because by doing that, I attain to concentration of mind and I increase spiritual power, my mind comes into focus, that's not repression. That is sublimation. And so tapas means sublimation of the energies of the body and mind towards a conscious spiritual goal. So it has nothing to do with torture of the flesh or things like that. It has everything to do, the essence of it is concentration. And the greatest tapasya, the greatest practice of tapas, of austerity, is concentration of the mind. And other things, if some people like to fast once in a while, some people like to do other practices like that, those are all optional. But the goal of tapas in yoga is to concentrate the mind. So tapas, concentration of the mind through disciplining the mind and body. Then swadhyaya, self-study. Here self-study has a very technical meaning in yoga. It means self-study means the repetition of a mantra which brings interiority of the mind. In the first chapter, Patanjali, where he's defining God, the yogic concept of God, he says that tasya, meaning God's, tasya vachakaha pranavaha. The manifesting word of God is Om. But this is true of all true mantras. All true spiritual mantras are the manifesting word of God. And so he says, tasya vachaka pranavaha. His manifesting word is Om. Tad japas tadartha bhavanam. One should repeat it and think of its meaning as one repeats it. So by repeating it, you're practicing japa, you're thinking of the meaning. People often ask me, what I was told by my guru to repeat my mantra and at the same time think of its meaning. The meaning of the mantra is the reality it represents. So it doesn't mean thinking about something or that it has a dictionary definition. The mantra of Ramakrishna means Ramakrishna. The mantra of Kali means Kali. The mantra of Jesus means Jesus. So the meaning is the deity. So tajapastarartha bhavanam, that should be repeated and you should think about the meaning. Tatah pratyak chetanadhigamo pyantaraya bhavascha. From that japa and thinking of its meaning, again, the deity which it represents or the aspect of the reality which it represents, from that comes interiority of the mind, antaraya bhavas, the interiority of the mind and the destruction of obstacles to yoga. So that is swadhyaya. Swadhyaya also means self-study, the study of sacred texts and trying to understand them for the sake of spiritual life, not for becoming a pundit, but for understanding for spiritual life. But it primarily means the repetition of a mantra, the self-study, the self-understanding that comes through the repetition of a mantra. And Ishvara Pranidhana, the third element of Kriya Yoga, is surrender to God. And so the concept of God, I'll say very briefly in yoga, is an unusual concept. It's not the concept of God worshipped in the devotional traditions of Hinduism, not the concept of God in Vedanta. God is a special person, Purusha, a special soul who is always perfect. We are born out of past karma because we're not perfect. Once we fall into ignorance, we forget who we are, then we have to wander through samsara and making karma and experiencing the fruits of our karma until we come back to realization. But God is a special soul who never falls into Maya, who is the repository of infinite knowledge. There's not time to explain that, but it's a beautiful concept once you get it. The idea that we're trying to learn things, and because of our modern bias, which is that everything has come out of matter and gradually things get more and more complex, but the basic reality is matter, and then matter complexifies, and then we get consciousness and other things. We learn a little bit, we learn a little more, our knowledge expands, we put it in libraries, then we put it in the cloud and so forth. But the idea here is that there must be a repository of infinite knowledge of which our individual knowledges, that knowledge which we get in our lifetime, is a little piece of that. And so God is the repository of omniscience, of infinite knowledge, infinite perfection. Because if we're striving for perfection, there must be a perfection which exists that we're striving for, that we're trying to reach. God is that special soul who represents perfection and omniscience. So that is God according to the Yoga Sutras. The Ashtanga Yoga is the other path that Patanjali teaches. So he teaches Kriya Yoga as one discipline and a parallel path of Ashtanga Yoga. The two are really two different ways of approaching yoga. For a long time, Patanjali has been identified with Ashtanga Yoga, that is the 8 limbs of yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga, which I'll mention in a moment. But most people, when they think of yoga, they're thinking of these 8 limbs. But that's only one, and it's not the main teaching of Patanjali. The main teaching, which he gives in the first part of the 2nd chapter, is Kriya Yoga. So the Ashtanga Yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga, they're the famous yamas or moral disciplines, the niyamas, the personal disciplines like cleanliness and contentment, etc. It's interesting that the niyamas contain the 3 practices of Kriya Yoga. That is, that it includes cleanliness, contentment, tapas, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana. Those 3, austerity, self-study, and surrender to God are included in the niyamas. And then comes asana, the postures for bringing the body into harmony so that it serves as an instrument of concentration. When the body is in harmony, the prana, the vital force, flows smoothly. Then pranayama, controlling of the breath in order to bring the prana. Prana doesn't mean breath. Prana means the vital force, which we control by controlling the breath, because it's prana which controls the breath. And by controlling the breath in the reverse process, we get hold of the prana. And the prana controls the mind. And then we get control of the mind, and then we can focus the mind and attain to perfection. So then after pranayama comes pratyahara, which means withdrawing the mind from the sense objects. If you look in the yoga literature, you'll have a very hard time anywhere, even in the great commentators of the ancient days, any explanation of the practice of pratyahara. It just means withdrawing the senses from the external world. My belief is, because of the way that it's described and where it's described as a preliminary to meditation, it can be understood as the practice of mindfulness, mindful attention, keeping the mind aware, because to do that, we have to disidentify with the senses. We're not closing the senses, but we disidentify. We're just aware, using the senses, but not attached to them. Things arise and fall in the mind, but we're not attached. So pratyahara, then dharana, concentrating the mind. We take a focal point and focus on it, the mind runs away. We bring it back, the mind runs away. We bring it back, the mind runs away. That's what meditation is for most of us, the practice of dharana. So people say that, Swami, I can't meditate. Every time I try to meditate, the mind runs away. That's everybody's problem. As one of my teachers told me 40 years ago, if Einstein, more than 40 years ago, he told me that if Einstein himself had taken to spiritual life, he would have had the same problem. So that is dharana. When you're practicing meditation and the mind doesn't stay where it's supposed to, you're practicing dharana. So all you have to do is every time you realize that it's run away, you bring it back. It runs away, you bring it back. A time will come when you put the mind where you want to meditate, suddenly it stays. It's just there. It doesn't go anywhere. That is dhyana. That's real meditation. So when we say I'm going to meditate, what we mean is I'm going to try to practice concentration. But when meditation comes, as yoga describes it, meditation is a state when we put the mind on something, the mind just stays. After a while, again, it falls into distraction, but for some time it stays there, maybe for a few seconds. For the first time, for a few seconds, it stays absolutely steady, and then it runs away. So that is dhyana as a state. And when that is perfected, the dhyana as a state, we come to samadhi. And in samadhi, you put the mind there, the mind stays, but after some time, it's still there, it stays. And then the samadhi is differentiated from meditation, not only and not even primarily by the fact that it lasts longer than meditation. The primary distinction is that in meditation, it comes about through effort. We're trying to keep the mind there, but actually the mind stays. And so we're successful in the effort. But in samadhi, it's a spontaneous state. There's no effort. The mind is placed there and the mind just stays. And then that deepens into a state of samadhi where the object of our meditation alone remains. Now, my time is practically up. I've gone through some of the major concepts of yoga, but let me just mention one other important thing, and then I'll conclude my part and we'll take questions. And that is there a lot of misunderstanding about the types of samadhi in yoga. So let me just briefly say, because it's important for our practice, not just for understanding yoga from a philosophical standpoint, etc., but for our practice, that the state of samadhi is said to be, and I'll use the Sanskrit terms as I've been doing, but I'll explain them. Savitarka, savichara. Savitarka means with cogitation. Actually, it means with reasoning, but it's not reasoning as we generally think of it. And savichara means with cogitation, but not cogitation as we normally think of it. So forget about the literal meaning of these terms. I'll explain what they mean experientially. Savitarka samadhi is when we practice concentration on a physical object, like a golf ball, or like a black dot on a piece of paper on the wall. We can take anything. We can take a soccer ball. Any physical object that we concentrate on, as Swami Vivekananda says, we can attain samadhi even by just concentrating on a black dot. Yes. So take anything that you can actually perceive, a physical object that you see or a sound that you actually hear, and focus the mind on that and attain to samadhi where the mind is absorbed in the sound, so spontaneously absorbed so that that's all that you see, that's all that you hear. The mind is spontaneously absorbed in it. That is savitarka samadhi. When you take a mental object, like you meditate on a deity within your heart, you picture Sri Ramakrishna or Jesus or Buddha within your heart. That is a subtle object. You're not actually seeing them within your heart. Yes, you can look at the picture and meditate on that, which is a good meditation when you can't visualize. Many of us can't visualize well. If we can't visualize, look at the picture. Then that leads to savitarka samadhi, because that's something visible. But if you're picturing it in your heart, whether you start with the ability to visualize or eventually develop it, it doesn't matter. When you're able to visualize, that leads to savichara samadhi, that is absorption in a mental object. When you repeat a mantra, maybe you repeat it with a sound by saying it softly, then you're meditating on the physical sound of the mantra. But eventually you can get to where the mantra is heard mentally, without any movement of the mouth, any movement of the breath, just mentally. That leads to savichara samadhi if you become absorbed in the mantra. If you can attain to savitarka samadhi, the one meditating on a physical object, it's easy to go from there to the absorption in a subtle object. And so if you attain to absorption in a subtle object, like a visualization or a mantra, then it's easy to go to physical absorption also. So don't worry so much about whether I should meditate on something physical or something mental. Develop the power of concentration, and that can be transferred either way. Uh, and so when those samadhis are attained, then you come to what is called nirvitarka and nirvichara. I know these are difficult terms, but yoga is a difficult topic. And it can't be described without getting into these concepts. So if you get to nirvitarka, nirvichara, that is where there is no more cogitation in the mind, you're absorbed as you were before, but now arthamatra nirbhasa, only the object itself shines. In the lower samadhi, you were completely absorbed in the object, but there was still the sense that of a distinction between you and the object. But when the object alone shines and you are identified with the object, your consciousness is identified with the object alone shines, that is nirvitarka if it's a physical object, or nirvichara if it's a subtle object. So if you're meditating on Sri Ramakrishna in your heart, and suddenly you see Sri Ramakrishna in your heart, you're absorbed in it, you forget everything else, you're just absorbed in that, then you have attained to nirvichara samadhi because it's a subtle object. There's much more that can be said on samadhi in the yoga system, but there's no time. So I'm going to end on a note which I hope is of some practical value either now or eventually, and that is the impulse towards oneness, the impulse towards absorption. It sounds strange to the Western mind to think of meditating on something like a black dot and becoming completely absorbed in it. But the idea there is that you're coming to a point where there's nothing but that gives tremendous power to the mind. And then you know the object in its fullness. It's like knowing something from the inside, not knowing it just the outside appearance, but suddenly you know it from the inside. But the most important part of that is the fact that you have attained to a state of oneness, which eventually leads to the state of oneness with the truth. And so in our spiritual life, as we go, a time comes where whatever it is that we seek in spiritual life, whether it's a person like Sri Ramakrishna, the Holy Mother, Kali, Durga, Jesus, Buddha, Kuan Yin, Avalokiteshvara, whatever. We focus on that so much with so much devotion that we want that alone. Let everything else disappear, just that. If you recite a mantra, then the mantra becomes everything. You try to dissolve the whole universe into the mantra. This doesn't sound strange in the early number of years of spiritual life, but a time comes where you understand that yes, I want to enter into the mantra. I want to become the mantra. The mantra is everything. You begin to feel that the whole universe is the mantra. You want nothing but the mantra. Let everything dissolve into the mantra. And then you're just a step away from the attainment of the divine. And so that yoga leads us towards this ability to absorb ourselves in oneness. And when we have that, then we are, again, just a step away from the realization of the divine, which is what I and all of us are really seeking, whether we know it or not. That's what we're trying to get. So I've gone a little over time. I'm sorry. Let me turn it over to Swami Harinamananda to facilitate any questions that there might be.
Thank you very much, Swami. So now we'd like to go to the question and answer session. So for those that are new or that would like to submit a question, there are two ways of doing this. One is that below there's a chat box. You'll see on in the middle of your, if you click on the chat box, you can type in a question. I must warn you, we've probably had about maybe 50 to 100 questions already given. And the second way of doing this is if you hit the participants button to the left of the chat box, on your right-hand side, you'll see on the bottom, see raise hand. And you can click raise hand if you want to ask a live question, and then Vikram will choose you. And as you please just state when we choose you, where you're calling from, where you're from, and also your name. Swami, let me just begin by thank you, wonderful presentation. A general question that's asked sometimes is, you said in the beginning of the introduction, the Yoga Sutras basically start from the most difficult, stating who you are. And then if you don't get that lesson, then it's working its way down to lower and lower lessons, so, sort of like starting from the PhD program and then working its way down to kindergarten level. Maybe it's the same thing in, we see in the Bhagavad Gita. It starts with Jnana Yoga, and then it's working itself down to the final chapter where if you can't do anything else, surrender to me. So why does the progression usually start from, in the West, we usually go from beginning to advance. Why does it go the opposite way?
Yes, a good question, very good question. Slightly different reasons for the Gita and the Yoga Sutra. The Gita, it's because Arjuna was falling apart. He was losing it. He had lost it. And Sri Krishna wanted to shock him into doing what he needed to do. And the best way to do that was to stand on the glory of the self. To know that you are birthless, you are deathless. What is this fear? To embarrass him, but embarrass him with a positive reason. That is, to embarrass him into realizing what a fool he was making of himself and how he had to stand up, and that there was no cause for fear because he was the infinite self. So it's like Swami Vivekananda. Why did Swamiji always speak about the glory of the self, where Sri Ramakrishna talked about devotion for God most of the time? It didn't talk about so much about the glory of the self. It's because Swamiji realized that what humanity needed in its present degraded state was to realize the glory of the self and stand on that, and then do whatever you like, but start with that. So that's the reason for the Gita. But here, the reason is that the two reasons. One is that some people, just by reading the first 4 sutras, they don't need to read the rest. But that may be one person in 500 years that is like that. So at least let that one person get off easy. The second and more important reason for everybody is that in this, if I want to go drive from here in Houston to San Diego, and I drive out of the parking lot here at the Vedanta Society, and we're on Lindy to drive, I can turn right or I can turn left. If I don't know where I'm going, I don't know whether to turn right or left. If I know I'm going to San Diego, and I know the path, and I know that then turning right or turning left has meaning. Otherwise, turning right or left has no meaning. And so in spiritual life, if I know the goal, then suddenly my first step has meaning because it's going towards that.
I see. So it gives you the sort of the map in the beginning and then the directions afterwards. I see. One last thing here, just to follow up on this whole lecture. So basically in the process of the Raja Yoga, you were talking about how we're perfecting the mind as the instrument of experience. And through this perfecting of clarity of mind, our experiences have become more clear and stronger. And you said like a magnifying glass, the focus of the mind is becoming stronger and clear. And then you talked about, then there's a process of now focusing on the object of our meditation. So we're becoming more and more interior. Now, as you go more and more interior in the process of meditation, you're almost getting there. We still have what we call a vritti. So there's still a modification of the mind that we're constantly focusing. Granted, it may be the same image that is bubbling up in our mind, but again, bubbling up and down, the same image. How do we eventually get from the focusing of one pointed concentration to where we talk about nivritti, where you said in the second sutra of yoga, chitta vritti nirodha, the cessation of all vrittis? I still didn't quite understand that connection because you talked about the absorption, but where does the object leave? Even if it shines alone, where does still the vritti stop?
Yes, that I mentioned it, but I mentioned it very briefly and it was easy to miss. That once there is a single vritti in the mind, then you practice nirodha. Nirodha is the suppression even of that vritti. And that's something that can't be understood until we're almost there at that point. If we try to suppress the waves of the mind now, it deadens the mind, and that's not what we want. And so we raise a single vritti, we concentrate just on this mantra, or concentrate just on this image, or concentrate just on this symbol, or just this candle flame, or just this black dot, so that the waves of the mind come together. Once that's done, then we can learn to control that wave. But that's a very, very high practice that becomes more obvious to us when we get there. And you can see it in Sri Ramakrishna with his teacher Totapuri, that when Totapuri told him to withdraw into the self and just to be the pure consciousness, to leave everything in the mind, every time he told him that, Sri Ramakrishna would see the living Divine Mother, not an image, the actual Divine Mother would rise in his mind, the all beautiful, all merciful, all glorious, actual Divine Mother. And then Totapuri got impatient with him and stuck a piece of glass between his eyebrows and said, meditate on that pain. So then Sri Ramakrishna said, when he concentrated on that, the image of the Divine Mother came as before, but then with the sword of knowledge, he cut through it and he was plunged into the highest Samadhi.
Thank you.
So that we know how to do when we are practically there.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, Vikram, let's open it up to a live question.
Evening, Swamiji. The first question is from Regina, who's joining us from San Diego. Regina?
Hi, thank you. Swami Atmarupananda, thank you so much. Just a quick thing. I couldn't write fast enough. You said, we are consciousness shining through something. And I lost the second.
Yes, hi, Regina. We are consciousness shining through the mind and body. We are consciousness shining through the mind and body. That's why the body seems to be conscious. That's why if you touch my hand, I feel that you've touched me. The hand seems to be conscious. No, consciousness is who we really are, and it's only because it's shining through the body that you touch my hand and I feel it. It's because of I am consciousness, but that my consciousness is shining through my mind, and so my mind seems conscious. My thoughts seem conscious. But consciousness is something which is separate both from the body and mind. That's a very difficult thing to understand, but with time we can come to understand it. And once we begin to get a feeling for that, then we've come a long way.
Is it the Atma?
Yeah, it is the Atma. Yeah, it is the Atma. Yes, that's the Atma.
Oh,
and so, yes. So if we can learn to think that I am the light which illuminates all my experience, but I'm not the experience myself. If the mind is depressed, I'm not the depression. The mind is illuminating a wave of depression in my mind. I'm elated. I'm not the elation. The light of consciousness is illuminating the wave of elation in the mind. I'm something which is far above even elation, even ordinary happiness. I'm the light of pure consciousness, which is joy itself.
So I am the light illuminating what? Everything?
Illuminating everything. But first, the mind, and through the mind, the body, and through the body, everything else. That's why I see the world around me, because the light which I am is shining through the mind and body and out through the senses and illuminating the world around me.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Swami, we have a question from Maruna, who says, when I experience the stillness of the mind, will I know that? How will I know that my mind was still?
Yes, that's a good question, because oftentimes the mind in meditation, we try to still the mind and actually we go to sleep. There was a brahmachari with me in the training center in India when I was a young brahmachari in my early 20s. That was a long time ago. We would sit together in meditation, all of us, all of the brahmacharis in the training center, and he would immediately go to sleep. And so he'd sleep through the whole meditation session, and then he'd get up, and in all sincerity, he would tell people, oh, I had such a deep meditation. I wasn't aware of anything. Oh yeah, because you were sound asleep. So when we have attained to real stillness of mind, one thing is that the mind will be heightened in its awareness. The mind will be heightened in awareness, and there will be a wonderful sense of spiritual elation, a sense of inspiration that the mind has become still. So to get there, we can meditate on a number of things. Like yesterday, I had to go to the dentist to get a filling. And so whenever I go to the dentist or the doctor, I try to make a practice of detaching myself as much as I can and just watching what's going on and detaching myself from the body and as far as I can. So I find it helpful just to think of existence as this ocean, And I am there just floating in the ocean of existence. Everything here is melted into an ocean of existence. So just thinking of the ocean and me as a bubble floating in the ocean. Meditating on a beautiful scenery or something like that to bring the mind into stillness. A limpid mountain lake, something like that. We can bring the mind to stillness, but just be careful, because it's a problem that many of us have. I had the problem for many years also. Many of us have the problem of falling asleep in meditation and thinking that that is stillness. No, that's just sleep. And so try to keep the mind awake, alert, but just quiet. And so thinking of something like open space, or like you're floating in the sky, or you're floating in the ocean of consciousness or something, that will help to bring the mind to a state of stillness, but relaxed awareness.
And can you give just some practical suggestions? Because nowadays, with the lack of activity that we're doing, it's easy to sit in the shrine room and fall asleep. So if you find that happening, what would you suggest?
Yes, there are several things. One, of course, is to make sure that you're getting enough sleep. But the problem with that is, even if you get 18 hours of sleep a night, which nobody needs, still you can, when you sit for meditation, you still might find yourself falling asleep. So that's only a partial solution. The fact that you're falling asleep doesn't mean that you're not getting enough sleep. It means that the mind is not yet strong enough. So do get enough sleep. But after that, know what enough is, and then realize that if I'm still falling asleep, I need to do something else. Then you can do things like, and this happens to all of us sometimes. I've been practicing for 50 years now, so it's nothing like what it used to be. But every now and then still, if I don't get a good night's sleep or something, I feel groggy in the shrine. And so sometimes when doing japa, I'll raise my arm up like this and do japa up in the air like that. Or I stand up, or I keep my eyes open and look at a sacred picture and meditate that way. Or sometimes here in the chapel here at Houston, I do parikrama. That is, I walk around and around. If I start feeling groggy, I get up and just continue meditating, but while walking around and around. And then I go and sit down. And if I start feeling groggy again, I get up and walk around and round and round. So something to stir the mind up. But it's a good question, because one of the problems we face in meditation is we think too much about the fact that meditation means sitting like this and not moving. Yes, that itself is a good practice, to get the ability to sit absolutely still without moving for a certain amount of time. But that's not the only way to meditate. So when you're feeling sleepy, do something to stir yourself up.
Thank you, Swami. Vikram, next question.
The next question is from Karthik, who's joining us from Toronto.
Pranam Maharaj, thank you very much for the wonderful talk.
Yes,
So Maharaj, in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we read that Sri Ramakrishna said, Shuddha Man, Shuddha Atman Ek, that the pure mind and the pure self is one. So in the light of Raja Yoga, how do you see this?
Yes, that's a beautiful statement of Thakur's. In fact, in some places he says, Shuddha Man, Shuddha Buddhi, Shuddhatma, Ek. The pure mind, the pure buddhi, that is the highest part of the mind, and the pure self are the same. Now that's different from Patanjali's system. Let me explain Patanjali's system very briefly. Patanjali's system, what it says, Patanjali's system is, philosophically, it's a realistic system. That is, Patanjali believes that this universe is as we see it. It comes out of Prakriti, but what we're seeing here is a real objective universe. And so the mind also is real, but I'm not the mind. But the mind is there. He doesn't doubt the existence of the mind. But non-dualistic Vedanta says, no, that was the great weakness, or that was the shortcoming in Patanjali's philosophy, was that he didn't realize that Prakriti itself is just an appearance of Brahman, an appearance of God, an appearance of the Divine Mother. And so according to non-dualistic Vedanta, the mind, the manas, that merges into buddhi, because the mind is nothing but an emanation of the buddhi. The buddhi, the highest part of the mind, purest part of the mind, that part of the mind that knows truth. And the buddhi, the manas, that part of the mind which doubts and thinks and questions and analyzes and all of that. And so that mind, when we become concentrated, that mind merges back into its source, which is the buddhi, the higher part of the mind. And then when that becomes purified, that merges back into the self, because it was never different from the self. As Swami Ashokananda used to say, the mind is the sense of distinction. That's the root of the mind, the sense that I am not I'm not Brahman. I am an individual. That is the mind. So out of that idea comes the buddhi, the manas, the body, and the experience of the world. So briefly, that's.
Thank you. Thank you. Swami, we have another question here. It says, basically, I chant the mantra without understanding its meaning and without feeling anything. Well, does that lead to anything?
Yes, it does lead to something. As Holy Mother used to say, that whether you get pushed into the pool or whether you jump into the swimming pool, both ways you get wet. And so getting pushed into the swimming pool is like doing japa without really thinking about it. So now you don't want to remain there, but you can do that for years, unable to do anything else. And that is doing you good, in spite of the fact that you can't concentrate, you can't think of the meaning and so forth. So first of all, the meaning is the divine. So if you repeat the mantra of Ramakrishna, for instance, the meaning of the mantra is Ramakrishna himself. So when you repeat the mantra, you just think of Sri Ramakrishna present in the mantra itself. If your mantra is Kali, then you think the meaning of the mantra is Kali herself. So you repeat the mantra and you're calling up the presence of Kali. So that's all that the meaning means. But even that sometimes, even if we know that, sometimes we can't concentrate on it. And so we just end up, and I'll say Om because that's a mantra everybody knows, and I won't be giving initiation to people by saying that. So Om, 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 and the mind is thinking of other things. And I just can't focus on what Om really represents. If that's all you can do, do that, because it's doing you good. And eventually a time will come when you've said the mantra enough times. It may take years, yes, it may take years. Let it take years if it takes years. That's okay. What else are we going to do? A time will come when the mind begins to be drawn to the mantra. So just to think in terms of repeating the mantra, so that the mantra, the first thing to do in the practice of the mantra is just to try to fill the mind with the sound of the mantra, and to get the mind completely comfortable and familiar with the sound. So if that's all that you can do, just do that. That's okay. You're doing yourself good.
And then Mark, just a quick follow-up. There's another question that states, the practices that I do when I, at the end of my lifetime, the next reincarnation, do I go back to zero?
No one goes back to zero. As Sri Krishna says in the Gita to Arjuna in the 6th chapter, when Arjuna says that what happens if I die without having attained to yoga, then I've neither been able to enjoy the world, nor have I been able to attain to yoga. So like a rain cloud that breaks without shedding any rain, my whole life will be ruined. So Sri Krishna says, no, the doer of good, meaning here the spiritual aspirant, never comes to harm. That whatever you do is a permanent doing. Yes, we can backslide. Even in this life, we can backslide. But when we die, we come back where we left off, and we pick up. But as Sri Krishna says in the Gita, we don't just go back to where we left off. We come to a higher starting platform and go from there. And so there's no fear of wasted effort. We don't lose anything spiritually.
Thank you, Swamiji. Vikram, next live question.
The next live question will be from Jessica, who's joining us from Ojai in California.
Thank you, Swami, for a really wonderful class again. My question, well, earlier in the lecture, you were saying that the mind is only an instrument of experience and Raja Yoga helps focus the mind, and that we must learn to perfect the mind. But this made me think about, what about people that are, for example, experiencing mental illness, or for example, again, I'm a teacher and I work with students with intellectual disabilities. Is liberation not attainable for them. Or even for ourselves, as you know, I could walk down the street and get hit in the head, and then my mind physically is no longer able to maybe do the things it used to do. Or if I get older and I experience dementia of some sort, is suddenly Raja Yoga not a viable path for me, for people like that have experienced this?
Yes, that's a very good question, Jessica, and thank you for that. It's true that the complexities of Raja Yoga may not be possible if we don't have the intellectual abilities for following, or for tracking, or for understanding it, and so forth. But wherever we are, whether we have developmental problems, or whether mental illness, or whatever it is, there's something that we can do that will help us forward. And so that we should do. That one of the things that needs to be done in yoga as a system now in the modern world is, as I mentioned at the beginning of the class tonight, that yoga was not developed as a clinical system, but that there are people who are developing clinical techniques based on the yoga understanding. And so one of the things that is very much needed nowadays is to learn how to apply these general ideas to clinical situations and to people in various grades of mental development, so that they're helpful for everyone. I know of now he's no longer such a young man. I knew him when he was in his late teens and early 20s. Now he's probably close to 40, who had extreme or a severe form of cerebral palsy from his birth. And so cerebral palsy is like Russian roulette, as a friend described it to me. It can hit just the motor functions, or it can hit intellectual functions also. And so with him, it hit both motor and intellectual functions. And so he was developmentally, had developmental delay, and not much intellectual development. Yet his mother used to tell me that her son was her guru, because she learned so much about spiritual life from him. And he had a deep fascination with the idea of Om, and with and whenever spiritual people would come to their home, he was deeply affected by that in a positive way. And so even a person like this, who had severe developmental problems, had that which he could do and that which he did do. And so the trick for us, if we have a part to play in someone's life, is to find a way to reach people, because everyone can do something. And all of us are on a trajectory moving towards ultimate realization. But realization is, the ultimate realization is a very, very high state. And there are not many people in any one life in the human population who attain to it. And so the fact that some people may not reach the highest in this life, well, that's true for most of us. But whatever we can reach is a great blessing. And when we reach it, then we have gone that much further towards the ultimate goal. And so, yes, everybody can, there's a way for everybody to be reached.
Thank you, Swami. I'm going to combine two questions from two different people. The first question is, what is the difference between Kaivalya and Samadhi? Second one is, what is the difference between Samadhi and Turiya state?
Yes. So Kaivalya and Samadhi. Samadhi is the perfect focusing of the mind until the mind is completely absorbed in the object of meditation. But Kaivalya is the knowledge that I am the self, I am the Purusha, I am the Atman. It's not a state of absorption. So the state of absorption, or Samadhi, is to strengthen the mind so that the mind has the mind becomes so clear, so luminous, that the distinction between the mind and the Atman is perceived. And then you attain to Kaivalya. So it's not samadhi that gives you that, it's samadhi that gives you the luminosity of mind so that that becomes clear and it can be attained. And so turiya is the state of what Vedanta calls the state of kaivalya, the state of realization. So one who is in the state of turiya knows himself, herself to be the infinite and not a he or a she, but to know that I am the infinite reality itself.
Thank you, Swamiji. Vikram, next live question.
The next question is from Rajendra, who's joining us from New Jersey.
I'm joining, this is Ajendra from Austin, Texas.
I beg your pardon.
Yes, right.
Yeah. Question, what is the difference between Raja Yoga of Patanjali versus Vedantic meditation? How are they different?
Yes, in the Raja Yoga of Patanjali, or the Patanjali Yoga, meditation is seen as a technique. It's sort of like an engineer's path of do this and you get this result, or scientific path of just following a discipline and getting the result. In Vedanta, you start with the idea of meditating on the reality itself, whether as Brahman, the infinite, through nididhyasana, through holding on to the sense I am and trying to realize what I am is, trying to hold on to the perception of consciousness and realizing what consciousness is, etc., or meditating on a deity, on a god or a goddess or an incarnation. So in Vedantic meditation, you can do that in Raja Yoga also, Patanjali's yoga, but you don't need to do that in Patanjali's yoga. You can just meditate on a black spot, just to develop the power of the mind. That's the aim in Raja Yoga of Patanjali. But in Vedanta, the purpose of meditation is to meditate on reality itself, as a deity, as an incarnation, as my own self, as the Atman, as Brahman, and to penetrate reality. So in Vedanta, I'm trying to see into the nature of reality. In Raja Yoga by itself, just as Patanjali has described it, it's just trying to perfect the mind.
And second part of the question, Swami, I can ask is, since yoga is based on a dualistic system of Sankhya, the question is, who is joining whom? Who is uniting with whom?
Yes, and Swami Harinamananda mentioned at the beginning of the talk that does yoga, in the sense of Raja Yoga, does it mean joining or does it mean separation? So Bhoja, in his vritti, in his commentary on the Yoga Sutras, he says that yoga means viyoga. Yoga means separation. That is, yoga, according to Patanjali, means separation from Prakriti, separation from manifestation, and knowing myself to be Purusha. So there, yoga means separation from Prakriti. But in Vedanta, yoga means knowing myself to be infinite reality, which is everything, one with everything. So in Vedanta, yoga means union, and Patanjali's yoga means two things. It can mean either this union, that is separation from Prakriti, or yoga can also have the root meaning of practice, abhyasa. So the path of practice. It can have those two meanings, disunion or practice.
Thank you.
Swamiji, the next question here is from Jayanta, who's asking how to relate to tiksha with the kleshas, meaning the capacity of suffering. Why do we have to develop this? And how to make this natural?
Yes, that's a very good question. Titiksha means endurance of the vicissitudes of life, being able to suffer the vicissitudes of life patiently without getting disturbed. Just to lead an ordinary, normal life, we have to practice titiksha. If everything that happens makes me upset, I can't possibly be happy, I can't possibly have any peace of mind. So just for an ordinary life of basic stability, we all have to practice titiksha. But the spiritual aspirant has to practice it even more because, and I'll speak from the standpoint of yoga because that's what we're speaking about tonight, but it would be very similar for all of the four yogas. But from the standpoint of yoga, we're seeking to still the mind. And if I allow everything that happens in the outer world or in my inner world to disturb me, then I can't possibly still the mind. So I have to learn to bear the vicissitudes of life. That's why in the seal of the order, which again is behind Swami Atmarupananda, they're the waves of the water in which the swan is swimming. That represents karma, because karma means that the ocean of samsara is always in waves, always action and reaction. And so I have to learn to be still in the midst of the ocean of samsara, the ocean of life. Otherwise, there's no hope for ordinary happiness and no hope for spiritual development also. That's why Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna both used to say that in the Bengali alphabet, there are 3 shas. Now, in all Sanskritic derived alphabets, there are 3 shas, sibilants, but they're pronounced differently. But in Bengali, all 3 are pronounced the same. So they would say that there are 3 shas, but all of them say sha, 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 which in Bengali refers to sahanam, that is endure, 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 endure.
Thank you, Swamiji. Vikram, next question.
The next question is from Maitri, who's joining us from Greater San Diego. Maitri?
Hello, Swami. Thank you for your lovely talk.
Hi,
I got
Maitri.
so much out of it, as I always do, and I might be putting you on the spot here a little, because I would like to recall a technique I've heard you teach about a few times. I was reminded of it last week when we were talking about Jnana Yoga, and it seems pertinent tonight too, but I want to make sure I have it right because it's been a while. It was very powerful for me. It went something like this, and then I'll let you take it if you remember, where you see a thought and you ask yourself, who is thinking this thought? And then you identify that, and then who is watching the thinker? And I'm not sure if I have all the steps. I was wondering if you recall that and if you could describe it to us.
Yes, it's a meditation I'm very fond of. And so generally the way that I start is to think of, while I was sitting in a group meditation, guided meditation, think of the world around you and be aware of the fact that you are perceiving the world. The world is the object of your perception. So I see the building, I see the walls, I see the people around me, etc. I am the perceiver, the world is the object of my perception. And so I, as the one who sees the world, am different from that which I perceive. But then add your body to that. I perceive my own body. I'm aware of my body. How can I be the body if I'm the witness, if I'm observing the body? If I am aware of the body, it's an object of my perception. So how can I be that? I'm perceiving it. That is, I'm looking at it or feeling it if my eyes are closed. But whatever, it's the object of my perception, but I'm the perceiver. I'm the one that's perceiving it. So I'm different from I'm not essentially the body. Then the mind. I have my thoughts rising in the mind. I see the thoughts. I'm aware of the thoughts. How can I be the mind if I can see the mind and its operations? The mind is nothing but its thoughts. We're used to thinking, whether we're born in India or America, we're used to thinking of the mind as an organ, that the mind is the brain. And so it's secreting thoughts sort of like like bile or something else, or the thyroid glands secreting things. But no, the mind is nothing but its thoughts. It's nothing but its functions. And so when I can see my thoughts, I can see my feelings, I can see memories and things arising. How can I be them? Because I'm the one that's looking at them. And so then I tell people over a longer period of time, so it's more effective, of course, cycle through these levels of experience. Think of the outer world, how you perceive it, and you're the perceiver. The world is the object of your perception. Then think of the body. You are perceiving the body. The body is the object of perception. You're like the light which is illuminating the body, making it known. And then move to the mind. I perceive my thoughts. I'm not the thoughts, I perceive them. And so I am the perceiver. Everything else is perceived. I, as the Upanishads say, I am the unseen seer. I see everything, but I can't see myself, just as the eye sees everything, but the eye can't see itself. Even if you look in a mirror, you're seeing a reflection, you're not seeing the eye. So the eye can't see itself. And so the self is the ultimate seer, pure consciousness, which sees everything, but which can't be seen. But that doesn't mean we can't know it. We know it by identity, because it's self-luminous, like the sun. The sun doesn't need to take a flashlight to illuminate itself. It knows itself as luminosity itself. It's self-luminous. And so we, the self, are self-luminous. And so when we do that process and come back to the sense of I'm the light of experience, the light which experiences everything, eventually we get to a point where we experience ourselves as the light of experience itself and not as an object.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Swamiji. Next question is from Michelle from Chattanooga, Tennessee. She's asking, what is the importance of using a mala for japa? And is there a particular kind you'd recommend?
Chattanooga is a beautiful city. Lookout Mountain and Chattanooga, beautiful place. I grew up near there. So japa mala can be very helpful. Not essential, but many of us find a japa mala very helpful. As far as what type to use, that's up to you. Vaishnavas like to use tulsi beads generally, and those who are devoted to the Divine Mother and to Shiva, they like to use rudraksha, but that's purely custom. So there's nothing necessary. You can be a Vaishnava and use rudraksha, or you can be a whatever. So, but the value of using a mala is very interesting. It's like the flywheel of a car engine. The flywheel on a gasoline motor is off balance. And so it spins when the crankshaft is spinning, you've got the motor running in your car, and the flywheel runs along with the crankshaft, but because it's off balance, it pulls the engine like so. And so if the engine has a tendency to stall, the off-centered crankshaft keeps pulling it to make the, because it's got momentum. So it keeps pulling the shaft to keep the motor going. So it keeps the engine from stalling easily. The engine has to really try to stall. And so when you're doing japa with the mala, your mind starts thinking of other things, but this is still going on. Even though the mind is thinking about, oh, I got to go grocery shopping, and then I got to do this, and I got to do that, and I got to pick up mom, and then I got to pick up the kids, and all of these things. But and so then suddenly you realize, oh, yes, I was doing here, but this is still going on. And as you're doing it, if you get used to it, every time you're turning it, part of the mind is saying the mantra. Even if you're forgetful of it, part of it is saying the mantra. So this is like the flywheel, which keeps the repetition going even when you're unmindful. You don't want to remain unmindful, but that lasts for a long time unavoidably, unless we're born as saints. And so this helps in a great deal just to keep the repetition going. One other thing about it is that people ask, well, should I keep count while I'm doing japa? That also is optional, unless your guru told you to keep count, and then you should, but most leave it to the disciple, and so it's optional. But if you do keep count, then of course the mala helps you to keep count, because every time you do 108, you keep count, and you count it as 100. It's 108 beads, but you keep count as 100. And so you count off the repetitions of 100. And so when you get to 1,000, then you start over again. But then it's easier to remember that I did 1,000. Okay, now 2,000, now 3,000, etc. If you want to do multiples of 1,000. And so it helps you to, it allows you to be aware of whether you're doing as much japa as you want to, or whether you're slacking off. If you're not counting and you're not keeping aware of the mala, you're saying, oh, mom, I think I'll go get something to eat, and that's enough for today. And you might not have done much.
Is there a traditional way of holding the mala? So meaning you count with your middle finger, what would be the way?
There is a traditional way of holding the mala. I don't give a lot of it. I do it the traditional way just because it's traditional. I know that millions of people have done it for thousands of years. And so I like that. But I don't like to emphasize the traditional way, because that's not important unless it means something to you. But the traditional way is that you pull the beads over your middle finger, and you don't count with this. You don't use this finger in turning the beads, and that's why. Because in India, the tarjani, this is called the tarjani, the index finger. This is the scolding finger. I say, why did you do that? I say, who are you? In India, it's considered very impolite if you point at somebody. That's like here if we, depending on how we point, it can be impolite. But just pointing at somebody, oh, look at that person over there, it's not impolite. But in India, it's very impolite. And so this is the scolding finger and the pointing finger like that. And so you don't use this finger. You do it like that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Vikram, next live question.
The next question is from Manas, who's joining us from Kolkata.
Swamiji, thank you and pranam to you. I just want to
Namaskar.
ask, how kids can be introduced to Raj Yoga, and at
Yes.
what, how can the interest be invoked on them? Because the way our lifestyle nowadays is, if we talk to them about these principles, it seems Greek to them, because
Yes, yes.
it doesn't gel through, and they ask so many questions that Dad, smarter living, why spiritual living? So
Yes, yes.
if
No,
you can
that's a
help.
very, very good question. And kids can be introduced at any age to very simple practices. What you don't want to do is to make the kids feel that you're forcing them, because then they rebel. You're getting them to participate, and so don't make it like a punishment. Make it something that is enjoyable. So little kids, just teaching them to make pranam in front of a home altar or something like that. And if mommy or daddy is sitting and doing a little japa, letting them sit for a minute and get up when they want to get up and go away, instead of making them, oh, you got to sit for 10 minutes, which a little kid can't do. So you introduce slowly. You maybe give them the practice of offering a flower on the altar, or let them wave the incense or something like that with you present, so that they don't hurt themselves or whatever. But little things like that. And then the fact that if you, the parent, sits for meditation regularly, the child will see that. And it may be that they pretend that they don't notice, and they pretend that they don't care, but children notice everything. And that will make an impression on their mind that this is something that daddy or mommy thinks is important enough that they do it regularly. And that even if when they become teenagers, if they become rebellious or something, it will come back to them. It will come back to them. And then as far as what specifically to do when they're old enough, traditionally when a child was, it could be at different ages, but when they were somewhere between 9, 10, and 12, or between 8 and 12, when they were mature enough, they would be given the Gayathri Mantra. And that's a very good thing, to give them a simple prayer that they can say, and just teach them a very simple practice like that. It doesn't have to be the Gayathri, but that was a traditional prayer, which is very meaningful. And of course, kids nowadays don't grow up knowing Sanskrit, but the meaning can be given to them, or they can even be taught to say the Sanskrit and then to say the Bengali or the English or whatever their mother tongue is. So teach them some simple prayer, and teach them the value of just sitting and being quiet for a little while.
Yeah, thank you so much. Whatever you said, my kids are doing that.
Good.
And
Good.
what my request is that can we have such talks for the kids of age 12 year, 13 year, or 11 years? Because the simplicity can only be described when you have vast knowledge, which I do not have. I mean, most of us do not have.
Yes, no, that would be very good. That would be very good. There's a deep need for that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Vikram, next live question.
The next live question is from Medha, who's joining us from Washington, I believe.
Yes, Washington. My question to you is, how can we practice Raj Yoga to enable us to find our own voice and limit our sensitivity to other people's perception, behaviors, thoughts? Yeah, if you could expand on that.
Yes, no, Raja Yoga is a great help in that, because all of us need, just as with Sahanam, Tatiksha, just with the power of endurance. We have to have endurance in order to have even a normal life, what to speak of a super normal life, of spiritual life. And so also, in order even to lead a normal life, we have to have some sense of autonomy, some sense that I have my own voice. And in spiritual life, that's even more important. The problem in spiritual life is that we often emphasize, and for good reason, not being egotistical and not being selfish and everything. And so oftentimes that seems to work against having our own voice, because having my own voice sounds like I'm asserting me. I'm pushing myself forward. No, the two don't have to be contradictory to each other. The two can go together. Being unselfish, we can only be truly unselfish if I feel a certain inner self-confidence. If my unselfishness is based on a dislike for myself and a feeling of weakness and everything, then it's only a show. So true unselfishness comes from feeling strong inside. And so in yoga, if we practice any form of meditation, whether it's mindfulness meditation, whether it's japa with the mantra, whether it's visualization, whether it's just trying to calm the mind by various techniques, or whether there's a little pranayama that we do or whatever, by learning to practice meditation, we're learning to sit within ourselves, to become centered in ourselves, not self-centered as English would have it, where self-centered means egotistical, self-centered in the sense that I am comfortable right here. I'm comfortable right here. I don't feel that reality is out there and I'm somehow spinning around reality and value out there and I'm empty in here. No, I begin to feel that fullness is here. Happiness is here. Reality is here. And out of that, I can act. And so meditation gives us that sense, and all meditative disciplines, including prayer also, that gives us a sense of inner autonomy, that sense of being centered in the self, not self-centered again, as the English phrase goes, but centered in the self.
And can this be complemented by any of our other actions?
Yes, yes. Oh, well, let me ask, what do you mean by complemented by other actions? Do you mean other things that we do in the day?
Yes.
Yes, by the thoughts that we think, and etc. That's why Swami Vivekananda over and over and over stresses, always think that I am the divine self. Within me is all power. Within me is all strength. To constantly remind yourself that every experience that comes to me, that no experience comes to me, that I don't have the power within me to face. I can face everything, even the most difficult experience that comes to me. The power within me is there to face it. And so to assert that divinity of the self.
Pranam, thank you, Swamiji.
Okay.
Thank you. Vikram, next live question.
The next live question is from Durjoy, who is joining us from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Pranam Swamiji. Thanks, Pranam. Thank you for the lecture. I have a question which I would have liked to ask my Diksha Guru, but he is not in his Sthula Sharir, so I'm putting it up here, and this is regarding meditation. Many a times there are days when we don't have a very good meditation. The mind, as you said, wanders like a monkey from here to there. And it becomes very difficult to gather your mind and, put onto Lord's feet. And not only that, so many, unthinkable thoughts and queries, they come from the depth down of the heart, which would never come when we are sitting or doing some other work, which I don't know whether it is natural or unnatural. But at that time, I feel that, if I could have spoken my mantra, Diksha Guru mantra loud, then I could have gathered and forced my mind onto the meditation, which I can't, because as you know, in our order, Diksha Gurus have said, or they always say that try to do the japa, the meditation with the japa inside, recite it inside your mind and don't, speak that out. But
yes. No, that's a very good question. And so like Sri Ramakrishna says, that when you find that you are overcome by passion or something else, disturbing thoughts or whatever, then clap and chant the name of God. And so, yes, sometimes we feel that if I can say something out loud and just shout it and get everything out of my mind, it helps. So there are things that we can say out loud, like Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Thakur, Jai Thakur, Jai Thakur, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah, Jai Ma Kali, whatever. That we can say out loud. We can't say our mantra out loud, but our mantra also we can say with our lips. We shouldn't say it so that others can hear it, but we can move our lips, and that itself helps a lot. It's very difficult for most of us for a long time in the beginning to say the mantra completely mentally. And so if we just move our lips and tongue, that itself helps. But again, we can't actually say it out loud. So then we say something else, the general names of God without the bija mantra or something like that. Then as far as the difficulty of sometimes, some days we just can't concentrate the mind. No, that's true. That's the experience of everyone. Everybody has that until we've practiced for a long time and go beyond that. But that takes a long time before we get beyond that problem. So first of all, you are in the situation everyone finds themselves in. And so what do we do? So at that time, at least sit and do a minimum. At least to do a minimum of japa. Don't force yourself too hard beyond that. Because if you force yourself too hard, then the mind reacts. So do at least the minimum, say at least 108 repetitions of your mantra. Do your basic prayer and everything. And then if you can do beyond that, okay. But if you feel a lot of resistance, then get up. But keep to the minimum at least. And if you have to get up, then try to do something else, like read a spiritual book or something like that, or sing a bhajan if you sing, or something like that. Something that is a more active participation, or waving incense, or offering a flower, or something like that. Try to do something which is spiritual. So maintain a minimum. Do more than that if you can, without straining the mind and without hurting the mind. But if you can't, then get up and do something else. Read a book or listen to some devotional music or something. And just know that the mind only gives in after a long struggle. It doesn't give in easily.
Dhanyavad.
Okay.
Vikram, let's have one last live question.
The last live question is from Shantanu, who's joining us from Houston.
Pranam Swamiji, thanks for the nice lecture.
Yes.
I have one question, like what I understood is like meditation is like that more you practice, more you become perfect. But to start the meditation, is there any minimum time like we should try to sit and...
Good question. Yes, good question. For minimum time, different teachers may say different things, but I always say that it's important to pick an amount of time that you can do consistently every day. It's better to do 5 minutes every day than 2 hours one day and then not do anything for the next 2 weeks. And so take something that you can do every day. If you can do an hour every day, good. But if you find that an hour is too much, that the mind rebels and you just can't do it, then do less. So if you want to start with 5 minutes, do 5 minutes. Build up from that if you can and as you can. If you want to start with 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something, start with something that you feel, okay, in the midst of my busy life with my various responsibilities, this much time I can do every day. And so if on a particular day you have more time and you want to do more, then do more, but keep to that minimum amount of time that, so again, in spiritual life, what counts most is what you do every day. What you do once in a while, like going on a retreat or going to a special program or attending a program like this, those are helpful. But they're helpful only because they inspire us to try to do a little more in our daily life. So it's daily life that's important. So do what you can do and pick an amount of time that you feel confident that at least this much I can do every day.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji. Swamiji, I'm going to leave you, if you don't mind, because you're a very deep thinker. I'm going to leave you with one last question here. And I think this is a question that I'm going to ask all our speakers from now on. The question is this, is that now that we're experiencing this, this pandemic, global pandemic, sometimes the thought is, what is the meaning of this? You were just in I think a week ago in that 24-hour live marathon with Eckhart Tolle, Oprah Winfrey, where they're discussing, some people, Deepak Chopra, what's the meaning of this pandemic? I'd like to know from you at this point of your life and life experience, what do you think is the meaning of this, what we call once in a lifetime or once in a century pandemic experience?
Yes, well, that's a good question. And I won't pretend to know the cosmic significance of it, though I think there is. Everything is the play of the divine, and everything has some purpose. And the purpose of something like this, it will be different in the lives of everyone because life comes to each one of us personalized. That is, my experience comes as it does to me, just in the way that I need it. Even the bad things that happen to me come to me just in the way that I need it, because of my karma, because of my understanding, because of my developmental path. That happens to everybody. The universe is custom made for each person. And so the coronavirus also comes to each person somewhat differently, but it's part of the totality of experience that comes to us that all of us need. So there's the need of society, and part of the need of society may be to teach people to slow down. It may be to teach people that we don't need as much as we thought that we needed. It may be to teach people that even in a crisis like this, we have resources inner resources we didn't know that we had. Or it may teach us that we need to develop inner resources, because you can't depend on all of these things out there, because they're not always there for us. So whatever, there are social consequences and social things that we as a society need to learn. And then there's that which we ourselves need to learn. And so all of us should learn to face every experience that comes to us, including COVID-19 pandemic, as how am I supposed to deal with this? How am I supposed to react to this? And so there's the individual, and then there's the collective. The last thing I'll say on that is that sometimes, and I don't know if this is going to have that effect or not, but sometimes in the history of humanity, there are huge corrections that come. The fall of the Roman Empire and huge things that happened, the Great Depression, World War II, etc. Things where the huge cataclysmic events that happen in the world, those also have their place. There's that which causes a fresh start of society. And so whether that happens with this, or whether this is just something that passes and we forget about it in 20 years, we'll see.
Thank you so much, Swamiji. Wonderful. And for all of you that were participating, thank you so much. I'm so sorry there were so many questions and so many hands. What we're going to do is I saw many of the questions came up. I considered like there's some that are general questions. And what I think we'll do is we'll ask those general questions on June 10th. So on June 10th, we are adding another day to this Vedanta course series, where we're going to have Swami Sarvapriyananji, Ravachika Vrajaprana, and Swami Atmarupananda to answer just a series of questions. So it'll be a 2-hour question on June 10th. Again, the regular time, 6 p.m. West Coast time to 8 p.m. So, and another announcement here is that on Saturdays, for those that would like to learn a simple basic worship, on Saturday mornings, we do a simple guided worship where you can follow and actually do the worship yourself. And it ends in a guided meditation with Swami Satyamananda, where he's practicing on looking at the image of Sri Ramakrishna or any divine being you should have in front of you. And basically, it's scanning that image at each body part and how to lock that image in your mind, which is very helpful in the practice of Raja Yoga and the path of meditation. That is on Saturday, our time, 7 a.m. West Coast time. And you can go to the website to see the link there. I think that is it. And again, we are going to have a discussion group. The flyer will be sent to you guys, and that will be a wonderful, I think, discussion that everybody can come in and join. And at that time, we'll be able to have more of an introduction to this whole community and introduce yourselves and what are the things that we're facing. So thank you so much for everybody. Next Wednesday, we are going to have Swami Atmarupananda, the Swami from Washington, D.C., who is going to speak on Bhakti Yoga. That is next week, the same time. I'd like to ask Swami Atmarupananda to please close off with a chant. And Swamiji, thank you so much for this wonderful experience and having your darshan here and just the wonderful wisdom you're giving us.
Thank you, Swami, and thanks to everyone. Om madhuvatarithayate madhuksharanti sindhavaha Madhvirna Santvoshadhi Madhunaktamuto Shasi Madhumat Parthivagum Rajaha Madhudyorastuna Pita Madhumando Vanaspatir Madhumagum Astu Suryaha Madhvirgavo Bhavantunaha Om Madhu Om Madhu Om Madhu. For us who seek the truth and for all living beings, may the winds blow sweetly, may the rivers flow sweetly, may the herbs yield us sweetness. Sweet be the night and the break of day, sweet be the very dust of the earth. May the heavens pour down sweetness upon us. May the trees, lords of the forest, bear us sweetness. May the sun shed its sweetness upon us. May all the directions pour forth sweetness. Om, sweetness, sweetness, sweetness.